Hey Book Dragons, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking Sherlock Holmes. Let's go. So as you may or may not know, I am a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes. The character created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is just a fantastic character. I read all of the Sherlock Holmes stories back in junior high school, and I've been wanting to reread them. I started rereading a couple of them with my kids, and we just never got back to it, but I definitely want to reread them at some point. Sherlock Holmes is just a fantastic character. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptations. And I'm going to give you my top five, but I'm also going to start out with some honorable mentions, okay? So the first one I want to talk about is Enola Holmes. Now, of course, this is a Netflix original movie focusing on Sherlock and Mycroft's sister Enola. And Henry Cavill plays Sherlock Holmes in the movie. So Sherlock Holmes is in the movie, but it mostly focuses on Enola Holmes. And I thought it was just a really, really cool adaptation of the classic character and taking a different spin on it. It is based on a novel, and I forget what novel it's based on, but I'll try and put it here on the screen if I can find it. But Enola Holmes is a fantastic movie. If you have not watched it on Netflix, you should really check it out. It's a lot of fun. Henry Cavill plays a very classic Sherlock Holmes, but also at the same time a little bit more down to earth, a little bit more heartwarming than you would typically think of Sherlock Holmes. So it's got both a classic feel and yet very different as well. But I really liked his portrayal of Sherlock Holmes. They are making a sequel to it, so I'm excited to see what happens in the next Enola Holmes movie. I would also do an honorable mention for The Hands of a Murder. It was a TV movie back when I saw it. It may have been made for TV or possibly not. I'm not exactly sure. But Edward Woodward plays the role of Sherlock Holmes, and Edward Woodward is just a fantastic actor. Everything I see him in, I love him in. One of my favorite shows growing up was The Equalizer, the 80s version of The Equalizer, and Edward Woodward was in the title role and just blew it out of the water. Phenomenal performance. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed his take on Sherlock Holmes. I'll also briefly mention the Great Mouse Detective, classic kids cartoon featuring a mouse as Sherlock Holmes. Really fun movie if you haven't seen it. It's been ages since I've seen it, but it's a lot of fun. And the other one I want to mention briefly is a show that I have not watched the entire series of. I watched the first 3 seasons of Elementary with Johnny Lee Miller as Sherlock Holmes and Lucy Liu as Joan Watson. And it's kind of got a cool twist on it as well. Sherlock Holmes is a recovering addict. He's in a recovery program to help him with his cocaine addiction, and so it's really cool, kind of a way to modernize the story and put it in the light of Sherlock Holmes really trying to get help and at the same time being called on to help with all these different cases. So I do it as an honorable mention because it was not my favorite portrayal of Sherlock Holmes. The first 4 seasons were okay, and I don't know, I didn't feel like continuing with it. It just wasn't totally my cup of tea, but there were some endearing things about it, and so I would definitely recommend you check it out. It may, in fact, be for you, and who knows, in the future, I may go back and rewatch it and finish the series. For some reason, it just didn't click with me, and part of that was because it was kind of running concurrently with another very popular Sherlock Holmes TV series, which we will talk about shortly here. Okay, so now we are going to get to my top 5 Sherlock Holmes adaptations. And we are going to start with Basil Rathbone. I watched several of Basil Rathbone's Sherlock Holmes movies when I was a kid. One of them was in black and white. Actually, all of them I think were in black and white, but they colorized a couple of them. The one that was my favorite was Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon, or the Secret Adversary. I think it was Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon. I should have probably looked that up just to clarify it. But you know what I'm getting at. If you're familiar with those movies, you know who Basil Rathbone is and what I'm talking about. Just a really phenomenal series of movies that he was in. They weren't really based on any of the classic Sherlock Holmes tales. Maybe they couldn't get the rights to them, I don't know. But they were just completely original stories set in the world of Sherlock Holmes. And I also think that is very cool. So I've read some other books that are set in the world of Sherlock Holmes, but are not in any way, shape, or form based on the original stories. And so I think that's kind of cool to see that done. Professor Moriarty was fantastic in those movies. I don't remember the actor, but I just remember loving those as a kid. So that's my number 5. Number 4 is Mr. Holmes with Sir Ian McKellen. I absolutely loved this movie. If you have not watched Mr. Holmes, it is just a completely fantastic movie, so endearing. Ian McKellen portrays an aging Sherlock Holmes in the very twilight years of his career, and he is in the middle of dealing with the most important mystery of his entire career. And that is the mystery of dealing with Alzheimer's. And I tell you what, guys, it was just so cool to see him interacting with this young family that he lives with. He lives with a young boy and his mother, and he takes care of bees. And all the while, he's trying to figure out this one case that he never quite could crack, and having to deal with the onset of Alzheimer's affecting his mental faculties. And I just thought it was such an amazing and moving film. I'll tell you guys, I had to have a tissue box sitting next to me because that movie was just, oh man, I was ugly crying. And so, yeah, definitely when you watch the movie, and I say when because you really should watch it, you need to be prepared because it's extremely emotional. And I just can't say enough good about it. So that's my number 4. My number 3 are the movies created by Guy Ritchie, starring Robert Downey Jr. in the role of Sherlock Holmes and Jude Law in the role of Dr. Watson. Those movies are so fantastic, so funny. The action is just nonstop. It's great. And just, oh man, it's hard to figure out a spot on this list to put those, actually, just because they are so good. Again, it's one of those where they don't follow one particular storyline from the Arthur Conan Doyle mythos, but instead they just take a completely unique path, and it just works. The stop motion action scenes are fantastic, just brilliantly done, and I will say that Jared Harris in the role of Professor Moriarty is one of the best portrayals I have ever seen. In fact, I haven't seen anything with Jared Harris in it that I have not liked. Everything I've seen him in, he just absolutely steals the show. I actually like his Professor Moriarty better than I do Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. But I mean, they're still really, really good. The whole cast is just phenomenal, and those movies are just a blast. I highly recommend them. And we're still waiting for the third movie in the trilogy. It is supposed to be a trilogy. They've been planning it for years now. Last I heard, it's still happening. So I hope it happens really soon because, oh man, those movies just are phenomenal. So that's my number 3. My number 2 is Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman. That show, I tell you what, and it's really clever how they do it, breaking it up into like mini movies. There's only 3 episodes in a season, but each episode is an hour and a half, so you get to sit down and watch a mini movie all about Sherlock Holmes. And I thought it was really cool how they modernized it and brought it into the present day. They all use cell phones and different things like that, and the different villains and cast of characters that Sherlock runs up against are just brilliantly cast. Benedict Cumberbatch embodies everything that I would expect for Sherlock Holmes, but in a modern setting, and I thought it just worked. Martin Freeman was a fantastic Dr. Watson as well. I thought it was really cool how they modernized him as well. He's a hero of the Afghan War, and just seeing his character development and his budding relationship with Sherlock Holmes, and how they first become flatmates and all things like that. I thought it was just fantastically done. The actor who portrays Mycroft Holmes, who I can't think of right off the top of my head, is also an excellent choice. If I had to nitpick, I would say that Andrew Scott is not my favorite Professor Moriarty. Andrew Scott's a great actor, but I don't think his Professor Moriarty was what I wanted. And that's just me. But he just didn't click for me. But the rest of it was absolutely fantastic. There's 4 seasons. I enjoyed each and every season. It just kept getting better and better. So that is easily my number 2. And I'll just stop gushing about it because I have to get to number 1. And my number 1 is the Granada Television adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. They adapted I shouldn't say all. They adapted most of the Sherlock Holmes stories, each even broken down into their individual story arcs. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and the Casebook of Sherlock Holmes and the Return of Sherlock Holmes. They broke it all down and took signature stories from each of those sections of Arthur Conan Doyle's complete work and adapted them for television. But that is not what stole the show for me. What stole the show for me was Jeremy Brett. Jeremy Brett, by far, gave the best portrayal of Sherlock Holmes I have ever watched. And to this day, he still is number 1 for me. No doubt about it. Just a phenomenal Sherlock Holmes. Now, when it comes to Sherlock Holmes, my first preference is a Victorian setting. That's how I prefer my Sherlock Holmes shows to be set. And so the Granada television series did that. Not that I don't like modern adaptations and modern retellings. I do. But I love the classic Sherlock Holmes set in a Victorian era. And I tell you what, guys, Jeremy Brett was an absolutely brilliant Sherlock Holmes. Edward Hardwicke was an equally great Dr. Watson. I thought he did a fantastic job. But Jeremy Brett was absolutely breathtaking. Every time I watch him, I keep thinking to myself, man, what a class act. And and I firmly believe they probably would have made all of the Sherlock Holmes eventually if Jeremy Brett had not died untimely. That was just so sad because he is just a phenomenal actor. One of my favorite portrayals that he did was in The Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, this series is set up with some of them being like hour-long TV episodes, and then you've also got some that are full-length movies. I think there's like 4 or 5 full-length movies. So they did a full-length movie for The Hound of the Baskervilles, and oh my God, that was amazing. Everything they did in that portrayal of Hound of the Baskervilles was spot on. I just you're gonna get tired of hearing me gush about this, but you guys, if you love Sherlock Holmes as much as I do, or even if you love Sherlock Holmes just a little bit less than I do, but you still really like him, you have to watch the Granada TV series. It is just mind-bogglingly good. So that's the end of my my top 5. My honorable mentions as well. I highly recommend that you check those out. But let me know in the comments what you think about my top 5 list of Sherlock Holmes adaptations. Have you watched any of these? What did you think? Are there some that I missed here that you think I should check out? I'm sure there's some Sherlock Holmes adaptations that I've missed because Sherlock Holmes, I think, is the most adapted character of any literature to date. Even adaptations of Agatha Christie's works don't stand up to how many adaptations there have been of Sherlock Holmes. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments too, but I'm just always looking for a really cool adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. One that just came to mind is Young Sherlock Holmes. I actually have not watched it, but I've heard it's good, so I'll probably check that one out. But hit me in the comments. Let me know what you think. Make sure to tune in this weekend. I have Dr. Philip Chase on Chaz and Friends, so make sure you check that out. Put it on your calendars. We are meeting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday the 26th. So put it on your calendar. Join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. I have no doubt. And make sure you are reading more books, guys. I'll talk to you soon.